What if his people prayed?
If my people call by my name.
Hey, just wanted to share an interesting observation that came to me last night in prayer. As I often do after a video, of course I read all the comments that people make. And recently I did one called, Is David Bowie in Hell? And then I did a follow-up with about deathbed confessions because, people commented that you can't say he's in hell. You weren't there when he died. Maybe, he had a deathbed confession. Maybe he got saved at the end, and, rightfully so. And I won't go into all that here. You can watch the videos. I'll put the links below. But one thing I did kind of hit me last night as I was going over those comments and thinking about, of course, most of the negative comments are people who aren't even Christians, never probably even read the Bible before, so I don't really take much heed in what they say. But there were a few people that I love and admire and respect, and they said, Daryl, would you say that this man's in hell at his funeral? So I got to thinking about that comment, and of course in Luke 16, Jesus gives us a picture. It's one of the only times we really get an image of what's going on in hell and how people in hell would react. It's the story of the rich man and Lazarus, and one of the things that occurred to me, in fact, before I reveal it, let me ask you what may seem to be a very crazy question, and it's something I want you to really meditate on. I want you to think about this. And be honest, I don't need an answer, I don't need a comment, I don't need a response, but I want you to really be honest with yourself for a second. If you were in hell, like the rich man, and you realized you weren't getting out of hell, but unlike the rich man, as you pleaded with God and said, well, hey, send someone to warn my family that they may avoid coming to this place. Keep in mind, once the rich man knew he wasn't getting out of hell, his first and only thought was for his family. And if you love your friends, if you love your family, if you love others, even strangers, then, you would probably be like the rich man and you would say, hey, send someone. But let's say in this particular case, you pleaded with God, you're in hell and you're pleading with God, please let me out. And he says, no. And you say, well, at least send someone to warn my family, my friends, and tell them about, you and salvation and grace and forgiveness and mercy and reconciliation and the blood that was shed on the cross. Send someone to warn them that they may avoid coming to this place. And by the grace of God, God said, okay, I tell you what, I'm going to let you go to your own funeral for 5 minutes, not as yourself, because that would freak people out, but as the person who's presiding over the service. He's going to let you go, for 5 minutes to share with those people that are gathered around your casket before they put you in the ground. And you got 5 minutes to share with them a message. Would you come back and be the person presiding over your funeral, knowing you're in hell and you're going back to hell and you're never getting out of hell? Would you say, oh, he was a good man, he was a loving man, he was a family man, he's in a better place? Or would you do what the rich man Jesus spoke of in Luke 16 did and warn them to repent of their sins and to fall to the foot of that cross and get right with God? I want you to think about that for a minute, because if you really think that my comments or my video telling the truth about a guy who not only, on his own, by his own accord, rejected God and Jesus and the gospel, but led millions and millions of people away from God, if we don't even have the boldness to point to a person like David Bowie and say, man, there's probably a great chance that guy's in hell, barring some deathbed confession of true biblical, godly sorrow, not just, I'm afraid to die, God, please rescue me, but true biblical, godly sorrow for sin, grateful for God's grace kind of transformation, barring that, the guy's in hell. And, if we have Christians can't even point to people that worship the devil, worship Satan, saying, people say, oh, you don't know what's in his heart. Well, yes, you do. Jesus says, be careful where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So when we see a person who stores up treasures on earth, loves to be worshiped as an idol by many other people, sings songs and praises people like Aleister Crowley, who was called the wickedest man of his day, if you can't point to that person and say, man, they're probably in hell today, then, you're too concerned. You're too caught up in what other people are going to think. And Christian, you need to stop. You need to stop fearing what other people think, what they say, what they're going to do. That's the same lies Satan tells Christians about why they shouldn't share their faith. The number one reason why Christians never share the gospel with anyone is because of fear. They're worried about what other people will think. What will they say? What will they do? What am I going to say? And so much more. Instead of doing what the word says, going into strict training and becoming all things to all men, that by all means possible some may be saved, willing to put their life on the line as the disciples did and all the early church did to proclaim his name and contend for the faith on the front lines. They're afraid of what other people are going to think or say. And the truth of the matter is, if you were in hell and you had 5 minutes to come back to preach your own funeral, man, you wouldn't say, oh, he was a good person, he was a nice guy, he loved his children. No, you would be warning them to repent of their sins, to put their faith and trust in Jesus Christ, that heaven and hell are real, that Jesus is real. Unless they are born again, they're going to perish. I mean, if you love people, think about it in that perspective. I do love people. And that's why I say such things. It's not because I'm mean. It's not because I want them to go to hell. Quite the contrary. I warn them, pulling them from the flames. I do everything I can and think of to try to rescue people from perishing in a place where there's perpetual torment, where the worm never dies, the fire's never quenched, where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now, you just think about that. Put yourself in that rich man's shoes. If you were in hell and you had 5 minutes to preach your own funeral, what would you say? You think about that. And whatever you come up with, that's what you ought to be telling people who are lost. That's what you ought to be proclaiming when you talk to people and you share the good news with other people. Think about it. This is Daryl Rundis telling you, I thank God for you.
What if his people prayed?